There's a reason you set an intention and immediately feel the urge to check. It's not because you lack discipline, lack faith, or lack the right technique. You're sabotaging the intention with the thing that feels safest, reassurance seeking. Most people think they need more signs. You need less interference so your system can stabilize. Most people assume peace comes after certainty. Like if you could just know the answer, the feeling would finally shut off. But that's the model that keeps you trapped, because what you're reacting to isn't a negative thought. It's the suspended state, the not knowing, the open tab your system can't stand leaving open. There's a name for that: intolerance of uncertainty. Not a label, a pattern, a reflex where uncertainty doesn't feel neutral. It feels like a threat. And this is why reassurance becomes your favorite switch. Uncertainty shows up, discomfort spikes, your attention narrows, you feel the urge to check, you seek reassurance, you get relief, and then the uncertainty returns, often louder, so the loop tightens and the system learns, do that again. You don't lack faith, you lack capacity for the unknown. What do you think will happen if you don't check? You don't lack discipline. You're trying to collapse the wave too early. What do you think will happen if you leave it unresolved? Your hero is the ability to stay when there isn't an answer yet. What do you think will happen if you let the feeling peak and pass? Because notice the paradox. The more you demand certainty, the more your system treats uncertainty as dangerous. And the more dangerous it feels, the more you reach for reassurance. So what looks like being careful is actually interference. A system fighting itself, signal drowned out by noise. This also explains why two people can face the same unknown, and one of them spirals while the other stays steady. It's not that the steady person has more information, it's that their system doesn't require closure to remain safe, and researchers have designed therapy to target this exact mechanism: intolerance of uncertainty, testing it in a randomized trial with adults diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, comparing a treatment group to a waitlist group. So the solution is not try harder. The solution is not think more positively. The solution is not collect better signs. The solution is to change how you relate to the open space. And that raises a deeper question. If reassurance is only a symptom, what belief is fueling it underneath? Because a major review has argued that fear of the unknown can sit at the root of anxiety, with intolerance of uncertainty as a central way that fear shows up. So when you're chasing certainty, you're not chasing truth, you're chasing safety. But safety doesn't come from a perfect answer. It comes from training your system to remain coherent without one. You're not broken, you're protecting yourself. And here's the challenge. Can you go 10 minutes without checking? Not to prove anything, just to watch the urge like a signal. Because the moment you can stay with uncertainty without flipping the switch, you stop feeding the villain. Most people set an intention, and within seconds, their hand is already on their phone, not to take the next step, to check, to confirm, to scan, to make sure the universe needs it. And here's the part you miss. You're not sabotaging the goal, you're sabotaging the state. Because an intention is a signal. It points your system in a direction, but reassurance is also a signal, and it carries a completely different message. The unknown is dangerous. So the moment you set the intention, you send signal A. Then you immediately send signal B. And now the system isn't moving forward. It's negotiating. It's oscillating. It's fighting itself. This is why it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like static. And that explains the paradox most people live inside. The harder you try to feel certain, the longer you stay in uncertainty. Because you think checking is clarity, but checking is interference. You think you're doing it right, but you're actually interrupting the stabilization phase, the part where your system would have reorganized on its own if you stopped touching it. You don't need more information, you need more space, a buffer where the signal can settle, where the nervous system isn't being poked for proof, where silence isn't punishment, it's integration before you act. And if that sounds too simple, notice how specific the behavior is. It's not, I feel unsure. It's, I must do something to remove unsure. Refresh, search, ask, compare, scroll. You call it research. But the function is relief, and relief has a cost. The cost is that your system learns a rule. I can't stay coherent unless I eliminate the unknown. So the next time an intention creates an open space, the system panics faster. The urge hits sooner, the loop tightens, and most people never catch it because it looks responsible. It looks like preparation. It looks like being careful. But it's a compulsion wearing a suit. Let me say that clean. Reassurance is a behavior. Behavior is a signal. So every time you seek reassurance right after an intention, you are training the system to treat the intention itself as unsafe. Not because the intention is wrong, but because it comes with uncertainty. And here's the debate your mind will throw at you. But if I don't check, what if I'm wrong? Exactly. Wrong is a possibility, and you're trying to delete that possibility with reassurance. But you don't delete it. You just delete your calm. So the unknown stays, and now you're dysregulated on top of it. That's why you can get 10 confirmations and still feel the itch for an 11th, because you were never hungry for truth. You were hungry for closure. And beneath that hunger, there's usually a catastrophic belief running in the background, not a dramatic story you announce out loud. A quiet assumption that says, if this stays open, something bad happens. This is why modern therapy doesn't just talk you into being okay with it. It trains you through experiments. In one randomized clinical trial, the intervention was literally built around behavioral experiments for intolerance of uncertainty, delivered in 12 sessions of 1 hour per week. And the point of those experiments was to test catastrophic beliefs about uncertainty, not to collect more reassurance, to confront the belief that uncertainty equals danger. So when you feel the urge to check right after you set an intention, don't interpret it as intuition. Interpret it as protection mode. The system is trying to collapse the wave immediately so it can stop feeling exposed. But coherence doesn't come from collapsing the wave. Coherence comes from staying stable while the wave exists. And that raises the real question for you. If you didn't check, what discomfort would you have to feel? Because that discomfort is the doorway. And this is where the work starts, not with a better sign, but with a better experiment. Behavioral experiments don't require you to believe anything. They require you to try, then let the system learn. Uncertainty doesn't disappear because you understand it. It disappears because you can tolerate it. Most people think the way out is mental, a better argument, a better affirmation. But your system isn't asking for an explanation. It's asking for relief, and reassurance is the fastest relief there is. You check, you ask, you search. The discomfort drops for a moment. Then the cost shows up, because what you just taught the system is, I can't be okay unless I remove the unknown. This is why behavioral experiments matter, not as a concept, as a mechanism. A behavioral experiment is not you thinking your way into calm. It's you creating a small, real-world test that targets the catastrophic belief sitting under uncertainty. So the system can collect new evidence. Reassurance reduces discomfort immediately and increases dependence over time. Experimentation allows discomfort to exist briefly and increases capacity over time. One is noise disguised as clarity. The other is coherence built through contact. Reassurance is temporary relief. Coherence is durable peace. You don't need certainty to begin. You begin to learn how to function without certainty. From a systems perspective, this is signal training. Reassurance sends, uncertainty equals danger. Staying present sends, uncertainty can exist, and I remain safe. And clinicians have operationalized this. A randomized clinical trial took 60 adults and assigned them either to an active treatment or to a waitlist condition. The intervention was structured, 12 sessions, 1 hour per week, and the core method was behavioral experiments specifically for intolerance of uncertainty, designed to test catastrophic beliefs about uncertainty. They tracked outcomes with a primary focus on the severity of generalized anxiety. They also measured worry, depression, somatic anxiety, and intolerance of uncertainty. Using growth curve modeling, the treatment group improved more than the waitlist group from pre to post across all of those outcomes. So the question isn't, can you think the right thought? The question is, can you run the right experiment? And in real life, experiments look ordinary. Delay. When the urge to ask or search hits, you don't obey it immediately. You let it exist for 15 to 20 minutes, not to suppress it, to observe it, single source. When you're hunting information, you limit the in-pieces, one source, then stop, because the goal is action, not certainty. Action first. You take one small step consistent with your intention before certainty arrives, because coherence is built through congruence, what you choose while the mind is still open, and your mind will argue. I need to check so I'm not wrong. Wrong is a possibility, and you're paying for the attempt to erase that possibility with your calm. What if I miss a sign? You're not missing a sign. You're missing the ability to stand without one. I can't handle the feeling. Exactly. And that's the point of training, to expand what you can hold. And that raises the deeper question. When you remove reassurance, what's left? Not the problem, the belief. The belief that an open space is unsafe. The belief that you must collapse uncertainty immediately to survive it. This is also why trying to convince yourself rarely works. Convincing is still negotiation inside the head. And negotiation keeps the system in conflict. Data ends the argument. Because when you stay with uncertainty and nothing catastrophic happens, the body registers it, not as an idea, as a lived update. So don't aim for confidence. Aim for contact. Notice the subtle shift. Reassurance is asking the world to guarantee your safety. An experiment is letting reality teach your system what's true. That's what restores coherence. Not force, not hype, just repeated, clean signals, until the nervous system stops treating not knowing like an emergency. And the moment you see it, you stop calling compulsion intuition again. Now you can understand the central paradox. Reassurance is like a painkiller. It creates dependence, so you never actually heal the fear of not knowing. Reassurance doesn't solve the problem. It just turns the alarm off for a minute. And the reason it feels so seductive is simple. It gives you certainty. It gives you control. It makes you feel like you're doing something. But that something is not healing. It's conditioning. Here's the loop in plain language. Uncertainty appears, discomfort rises. You reach for reassurance. You get temporary relief, and your system learns a rule. Reassurance equals safety. So the next time uncertainty shows up, the system asks for reassurance sooner, louder, more urgently. This is why you're not being made anxious by life. You're being made anxious by the strategy of hunting certainty. Because every time you chase a guarantee, you send a signal. I can't be okay in the unknown. And then the unknown becomes, by definition, dangerous. Certainty starts to feel like freedom. But it's a trade. You're paying for certainty with your freedom. You're paying for the illusion of control with your capacity. And that's the twist most people never see. Reassurance is also proof that you can't stay with the space. It's the same mechanic as a painkiller. It reduces the sensation, but it keeps the sensitivity alive. So the alarm comes back faster next time. This also explains why you can get one confirmation and still want another. Because you didn't feed truth, you fed urgency. So let me ask you something, slowly. When you just got reassured, how long did the relief last? Did you need a second hit right after the first? Were you looking for an answer or permission to feel okay? And if you didn't check, what were you most afraid of? Being wrong, missing something, or losing control? That's the scan. And when you see the pattern has a name: intolerance of uncertainty. Not as a diagnosis, as a mechanism. And a major review has argued that fear of the unknown can sit at the root of anxiety, with intolerance of uncertainty as a central pathway for how that fear expresses itself. So it's not random that the unknown triggers you. The unknown is the lever. And researchers have tested what happens when you target that lever directly. In a randomized clinical trial, the treatment group improved more than a waitlist group from pre to post, not only on generalized anxiety severity, but also on worry, depression, somatic anxiety, and intolerance of uncertainty. Notice what that implies. When you stop feeding the fear of uncertainty, multiple symptoms can shift in the same direction. Not because you manifested harder, because you removed the reinforcement. So here's the engagement check. What kind of reassurance do you reach for? Info, people, or sign? Write one word, because the moment you can label your drug, you stop calling it intuition. And that's the next trap. Intolerance of uncertainty loves to dress up as something beautiful. It will call itself guidance. It will call itself a sign. It will call itself intuition. But intuition is quiet. Compulsion is urgent. If you feel rushed, take it as a signal, not an order. So how do you tell the difference? Real intuition versus compulsion wearing intuition's clothes. If you have to check in order to believe, it's not belief, it's dependence. And this is where most people get confused, because the behavior looks spiritual, it looks rational, it looks like guidance. But the system doesn't care what you call it, it cares what function it serves. So let's make it painfully clear. Sign number 1, you ask the same question again, just to a different person or in different words. Not because you need new information, because you need a different nervous system feeling. And every time you get that hit of relief, you teach the system that the suspended state is not survivable without external confirmation. This is why the question comes back. Not because you didn't get an answer, but because you trained the loop. Sign number 2, you scroll until you find the sentence that makes you feel lighter, and you call that the truth. That lightness isn't truth. It's reassurance. It's the moment the alarm shuts off. And the problem is, you're selecting for relief, not coherence. So you keep feeding the part of you that needs the alarm off, not the part of you that can stay stable while it's on. And this also explains why you can feel guided and still feel frantic, because guidance doesn't come with urgency. Sign number 3, you postpone action until you get a sign, a motivation spike, or a feeling of certainty. You call it being aligned. But the hidden function is avoidance. You're using waiting for sure as a way to not feel the discomfort of moving while things are still open. So you're not lacking motivation. You're using certainty as a gatekeeper, so you don't have to face the unknown. Sign number 4, you keep checking your body to see if you're still anxious. And if you are, you go seek reassurance again. You're monitoring yourself like a weather report, as if you need permission to live based on the forecast. But monitoring becomes another form of checking, and checking is just the system asking, are we safe yet? When the answer isn't immediately yes, you reach outward, and the loop gets tighter. Sign number 5, you need authority. Someone has to validate it, or you can't choose. And notice what that does. It relocates your center. Your decision doesn't come from your state, it comes from approval. So when you don't get a clear answer, you don't get calm, you get more searching. Sign number 6, you keep switching goals, not because you're flexible, because commitment requires living with uncertainty long enough for the system to settle, and changing the target is a clean way to escape that exposure. So let's say it straight. Changing the goal isn't always evolution. Sometimes it's a flight response. Now here's the core reframe. Intuition is usually quiet. Compulsion is usually urgent. Intuition feels like ease. Compulsion feels like, I must know right now. And if you want the science-backed version of what I'm pointing to, it's this. Fear of the unknown has been argued to sit at the root of anxiety, with intolerance of uncertainty as a central way that fear shows up. So when you feel the urge to check, you're not witnessing a mystical sign. You're witnessing the system reacting to an open space. That's why some clinical interventions don't treat this like a mindset issue. They target the catastrophic belief under the uncertainty, not by debating it in your head, but by testing it with behavioral experiments. Because the belief isn't, I need an answer. The belief is, if I don't get an answer, something bad happens. And the moment you see that, the behavior becomes obvious. When you keep checking, you're not proving you're responsible. You're proving to your system that uncertainty is dangerous. So the next time uncertainty shows up, the system escalates faster. This is why you can't think your way out of the loop. Thinking is still inside the loop. What breaks the loop is a new signal, a new relationship to the open space, a moment where you don't obey the urgency. So here's the interaction check. If you recognized yourself in at least 2 of those signs, comment, "Stop checking." Not as a slogan, as a commitment to noticing the behavior before it owns you. Because once you can name it, you can interrupt it. And once you can interrupt it, you can build coherence. Okay, you've seen the signs. So how do you slow down without turning it into suffering? That's where coherence begins. Coherence is discipline that looks like silence. Not hype, not a peak, not a manic, "I finally feel sure." It's the moment you stop trying to force certainty and start choosing while the space is still open. Because the shift isn't philosophical, it's mechanical. When the urge to check hits, your system is asking for one thing: closure. And if you give it closure every time, you reinforce the same message: the unknown is not survivable. But when you don't feed it immediately, something else happens. You send a new signal: this discomfort can exist, and I don't have to obey it. And that's what coherence actually is, not a feeling, a relationship. The relationship between what you say you chose and what you do when uncertainty squeezes you. Most people think the problem is the uncertainty itself, but the problem is the reflex, the compulsive reach for relief. So watch what it looks like when you lead the system instead of being led by it. You feel the urge to ask, to search, to check, to confirm, and instead of calling it intuition, you name it for what it is: reassurance. Not with judgment, with clarity. Ah, there it is. Then you create a buffer, not a dramatic buffer, not a heroic one, a small one. 20 minutes, because the buffer is where choice returns. Inside urgency, you don't have choice. You have compulsion. Inside space, you have agency. This is why progress will look backwards at first. It will look like doing less, checking less, refreshing less, asking less. That's not stagnation, that's stabilization. And when you stabilize, your system stops fighting itself. Signal rises, noise falls. So in real life, the shift is built through tiny demonstrations. You want to check. You delay for 20 minutes, not to be strong, to gather data. You want to binge information. You pick one source, then stop. Because you're not collecting truth anymore. You're collecting calm. You want to wait until you feel certain. You take one small action before certainty arrives. Because action isn't the reward for certainty. Action is the training that makes certainty unnecessary. And this also explains the paradox most people never accept. You don't get certain and then act. You act, and then your system learns it can stay safe without certainty. That's why coherence feels quiet. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like neutrality. And your mind will complain because it's addicted to intensity. But the nervous system doesn't build a baseline from intensity. It builds a baseline from repetition. Choice. Again, and again, and again. This isn't just motivational talk. Clinical work has been built around exactly this idea, learning to test uncertainty instead of escaping it. In a randomized clinical trial, adults were assigned either to a treatment group or to a waitlist condition. They analyzed change over time using growth curve modeling, and the treatment group improved more than the waitlist group from pre to post across the outcomes they measured, including generalized anxiety severity, worry, depression, and somatic anxiety, and intolerance of uncertainty. Then the waitlist group also received the treatment, and the overall sample showed large, significant reductions, and the gains were maintained or increased at a 12-month follow-up. Let that land. If a structured intervention can train people to relate differently to uncertainty over multiple sessions, you can start with a single buffer today. not to fix yourself, to teach your system a new rule. And here are the twists your mind will resist. You think stopping reassurance is neglect. It's training. You think you need motivation to move. You move to generate motivation. You think intuition must be clear, but real intuition can be very calm. Force versus choice. Noise versus coherence. Urgency versus ease. So when the urge hits, don't fight the urge. Don't obey it. Hold it, like a wave. Can you stay with the wave for 20 minutes? Can you let the wave peak without turning it into a command? Because if you can do that once, you can do it twice. And that's how a baseline changes. You're not controlling the future by knowing. You're controlling the present by choosing, over and over, until the system stabilizes. Comment: I can sit with the unknown, not because it's cute, because it's a commitment to coherence. And here's the final twist. The less you interfere, the more stable the system becomes. You don't need more signs. You need to become the place where uncertainty is still safe, because the whole loop is simple. Intention, a gap. Intolerance of uncertainty activates. Reassurance seeking kicks in. Noise floods the system, and the way out isn't more effort. It's behavioral experiments plus coherence. There's research that has targeted the ability to tolerate uncertainty directly, randomizing 60 adults into a treatment group or a wait list, delivering 12 one-hour weekly sessions, and tracking outcomes from pre to post, with benefits maintained or increased at a 12-month follow-up. And there's also a broader framework arguing that fear of the unknown can sit underneath anxiety. So the moment you demand certainty, you touch the root lever. So listen to this as a declaration, not advice. You don't sabotage the goal. You sabotage stability. You don't need more answers. You need more capacity. You don't need certainty to live right. You live right to become certain. Don't ask life for permission. Because when you ask for permission through reassurance, you hand your choice to something outside of you. And when you create a buffer, choice comes back. Not as confidence, as quiet. This is the twist that will feel almost insulting at first. Your progress will look like less checking, less refreshing, less asking, less needing to know. Not because you stopped caring, because you stopped interfering. You don't need more confidence. You need less dependence. So here's the commitment. Comment: I can sit with the unknown, or comment coherent, or unknown, or stop checking. And if you want something practical, there's a one-page worksheet in the pinned comment, no pressure, that helps you spot the signs, name the catastrophic belief underneath, pick one mini experiment, and track it for 7 days. Because you're not someone who needs to be reassured. You're someone who needs to be trusted. And trust doesn't come from words. It comes from staying with the unknown long enough for your system to learn it isn't danger. If today you did just one thing, how long would you delay the next check?